Hi everybody, my name is Frances Bronet and I am the very proud president of Pratt Institute, and I'm here with Design Milk for DMTV Milkshake. So here we go. I am going to pull a question out of the magic bowl. What do you think has been the most worthy application of your cultural and political power? That is a heavy question. So, well, let me say this. When you have the possibility of having cultural, political power, it really helps to have an extraordinary institution behind you. I'm at Pratt Institute. Many of you probably know it's a recognized college for art, design, for media, for culture, for policy, for politics, for engagement with the community. We do everything from creative writing to gaming, from architecture to fine arts. It's an extraordinary place and has had a very, very long history of engaging with New York City, with Brooklyn, with the local communities. And what you do when you have that kind of relationship over a long period of time is you build trust. And trust is actually where true power can actually exist, because you're building relationships, and relationships are really how you can move anything forward. So for example, what we've been able to do, because we have had a long-standing K-12 program in the community, over 100 years old, serving 1,200 students a year at this point, we have that. We have relationships with industry that we've cultivated for many, many decades. We decided we would think about what would happen if we could build a public high school that could bring together the power of design thinking and doing with the importance of social justice, ultimately empowering students to make change in the world. We have that capacity, so we partnered with Bank Street College of Education in order to do this. So that's one of the enterprises that we're engaged in. Another is working with the Navy Yard, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is literally 2 blocks, very big blocks, but 2 blocks down the road from Pratt Institute. And what is the Brooklyn Navy Yard? It is a place that actually models everything that we have thought about at Pratt Institute, building a middle class from the working class, and thinking about how we are out in the world about entrepreneurship, thinking about tech transfer. So we're working in the Navy Yard with a research yard that combines Pratt Institute with City Tech, a part of the CUNY system, and also all of the enterprises that exist at the Navy Yard, a place which is actually generating both employment, but also new kinds of products, new kinds of environments that are changing the world. So I'm going to move to another question. Let's see. Let's try this one. How do you best protect your students from the commercialization of their work before it's had a chance to fully mature or become its most interesting self? So that actually is fascinating, given that I just ended the last question thinking about the Navy Yard. So we don't think about the sort of boundaries of a school as protecting you, although we do want to cultivate our students to really think about their work, their process, and they're not just generating product. So that is some way of that kind of protection, because we want them to take extraordinary intellectual risks, but we also want them to understand that they're working in a context. So when we think about working in communities, whether art practice, where they might be bringing extraordinary murals, or they're actually doing work in the area of Wallabout in Brooklyn and thinking about transportation, how people live, how people engage their social and cultural environment, those are critical as well. But we also, embedded in most schools, but I think maybe ours more than many, is we have a Center for Career and Professional Development. We also have something for example, our artists called Pratt Forward, led by alumni and our chair of fine arts, Jane South, led by alumni Micheline Thomas, Derek Adams, who's also a trustee, who are mentoring the next generation of students as they merge out of our Masters of Fine Arts program and start to think about their own practices. How do they work with galleries? How do they work with museums. How do they put their art into the world? These are things that we think about not as a separate moment in time, but as spectral. Okay, let me try another question. What kind of real change do you hope to foster with the Master of Landscape Architecture program? Well, of course, the Master of Landscape Architecture program sits in our remarkable School of Architecture, which has many, many disciplines, from construction management to policy to architecture and real estate, for example. So we are looking at all of our creative professionals to be responsible citizens to society. This is what we do in all of our disciplines. And we think about ecosystems, and in this case, let's say landscape architecture, that are going to be restorative, that build relationships between all species and place itself. I think those are critical parts of our curriculum and the way that we engage in the world, going back to building trust and building collaborations. One of the projects that one of our great landscape architecture faculty members has already done, if you haven't already been to New York City, or you're visiting us, or you haven't gone to the piers in the Hudson, is Little Island. And Sidney Nilsson is the landscape architect who actually created the environment on Little Island. Okay, I'm going to do another question. Let's do this one. What was the most important lesson you learned at McGill? Well, I learned a lot of lessons at McGill. I'm an architect and an engineer, and I did a diploma in business. Why did I do that? Well, I'm first gen, and I knew I had to do something where I had a job, and that would guarantee me a job: architecture, engineering, and a diploma in business. And in fact, we think about that for our students here at Pratt. We have a minor in entrepreneurship, and it's quite deliberate so that they can think about, in that minor, of course, there's all the business practice courses, but there's also professional ethics, there's social justice, there's philosophical ethics. And I would say that my own superpower would be to recognize that genius around me, and how does it all come together to work across disciplines, to work across personalities, and to work across communities that themselves. I think that penetrates everything that we actually do here at Pratt, trying to understand what deep disciplinarity is and how meaningful it is when we're creative forces in places like New York City. How do we build on all of the relationships, but also all of the extraordinary skills that these other disciplines bring to us, whether it's in business, or it's in construction, or it's in policy, or it's in fine arts. When I was asked, when I was a young person, 17 years old and going into college, what I wanted to do when I grew up, I actually very flippantly said I wanted to be the head of a think tank. I think I recognized that I could put together those people who thought differently than me, and how together would something extraordinary emerge. So, of course, what is being the president of an institution like Pratt, but being the head of a think tank? I think that's probably all the time I have. So I just want to welcome all of you. If you are anywhere near Brooklyn or Manhattan on 14th and 7th, or in Brooklyn and Fort Greene, come and visit our extraordinary think tank at Pratt Institute. Be well. Love doing this.